back everyone, it's time to go balls deep. You guys better get your popcorns ready and hold on to your Gojo body pillows because we are finally starting our in-depth series covering the Culling Games. This video will be the first part where we'll be explaining everything you need to know to understand what the heck is going on in Jujutsu Kaisen with the games, the merger of humanity with Tengen, and the mission to save Gojo. Like seriously, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening and I'm really excited about doing this series as everything will be explained super clearly, allowing you guys to enjoy Jujutsu Kaisen much more. But the thing is, our balls deep curse technique requires a lot of energy, and every time you smash that like button, you share some of your lovely curse energy with us. So you guys know what to do, right? Okay, so before we get into the game itself, we have to understand why our antagonist Kenjaku even set it up. What's the purpose and end goal behind it? Well, the Culling Game starts with the understanding of who Kenjaku is.
Who in the blue hell are you?
A curse user who lived for over 1,000 years, hopping from bodies to bodies using his innate curse technique, the brain switcheroo. Yeah, I made that name up as we don't have much information on his inherited technique, apart from the fact that he did take over the old Noritoshi Kamo from the past, along with potentially taking over Itadori's mother's body before he adopted his current host, Geto. But the main takeaway is that Kenjaku is old, and I mean extremely old. This dude was alive during the golden age of Jujutsu and curse technique, along with the likes of Sukuna, and being alive for such a long time, he witnessed the decline in Jujutsu sorcery and curse energy over the years. As we know from chapter 136, Kenjaku envisions a world where curse energy is at its peak, regardless if it's in the form of non-sorcerers, sorcerers, or even cursed spirits. To him, they are all possibilities of cursed energy. However, what Kenjaku seeks is something greater, as he sees more to human potential. During his time inhabiting Noritoshi Kamo around 200 years ago in the Meiji period, Kenjaku tried to create a greater form of curse energy in human existence by experimenting on a female captive that was capable of giving birth to a human curse spirit hybrid. Kenjaku impregnated her over 18 times that led to the creation of the 9 death painting curse wombs. Trust me when I say this guy is really savage, but as Kenjaku stated, what he can create does not exceed the bounds of his own potential. So he came up with a crazy plan to force human evolution by merging humanity with a transcendent being like Tengen, all to bring forth a greater form of curse energy and life. Although to even initiate this plan, a couple of prerequisites were needed, and for Kenjaku, all of it fell in place perfectly. So let's go over all of these prerequisites. The first step was to wait on an evolved Master Tengen, and those of you who don't even know who Tengen is, well, he's an extremely old curse user, and I mean extremely old, older than Kenjaku himself, with the curse technique of immortality. Yes, that's his innate technique. Pretty crazy, right? Because of this and Tengen's mastery over barriers, he takes on the role to hide the Jujutsu schools and the Jujutsu world from the ordinary people and those that have ill intent. By the way, I say he, but we don't even know his gender. Now, here's the thing. Tengen's technique grants him eternal life. However, it does not stop the aging process. Because of this, Tengen must reset his body every 500 years by merging with a star plasma vessel, which is a specific human being, all in order to prevent his technique from causing him to evolve past humanity and into potentially a dangerous state, being similar to that of a cursed spirit. And guess what? Well, 11 years from the present time, we learn that Tengen failed to merge with the star plasma vessel due to her death and continued to evolve. This is also the reason why Tengen has 4 eyes and looks like a deformed toe. Anyways, Kenjaku, being 1,000 years old, had knowledge of Tengen and probably even knew him personally. Understanding this is the state that he required Tengen to be in to achieve his goals in assimilating humanity with this internal being. But hold on to that thought as I'll explain this merger more in a bit. With that, we come to the second step. Kenjaku had to gain the curse technique belonging to Suguru Geto, his innate curse spirit manipulation. This technique allows the user to summon and control curse spirits after capturing them. him. The user must first exercise or purify the cursed spirit by defeating it, but then afterwards he pretty much has his own familiar. And using an extension of this curse technique, Uzumaki, the user can extract and keep the innate curse technique of a semi-grade 1 cursed spirit or higher. Subsequently, Kenjaku can also manipulate the evolved Tengen with this ability as elaborated in chapter 145 when Maki asks why Tengen just can't reject any assimilation, in which he explains that due to his evolution he is now more like a curse than a human, making him susceptible to Geto's curse manipulation technique, which is in the hands of Kenjaku. Tengen believes that if he runs into Kenjaku, he would be absorbed immediately upon contact due to Kenjaku's level as a sorcerer. This is why Tengen, as a protection protocol, is rejecting everything from entering the Tomb of the Star, where his actual main body is located. However, Tengen reveals Kenjaku is a barrier master second to him, so it's only a matter of time before he unseals the tomb and finally gets his hands on Tengen. But let's move on to the third step, which was for Gojo to be sealed. Throughout time, Kenjaku tried to stop the merger with Tengen and the Star Plasma Vessel, but he was killed twice before the Six Eyes wielder. On the second try, Kenjaku even managed to kill the Six Eyes wielder before they hit 1 month old. However, on the day of Tengen's assimilation, both the Star Plasma Vessel and the Six Eyes still appeared. This caused Kenjaku to change his strategy. He chose to seal Gojo because there cannot be two wielders of the Six Eyes at the same time. And let's be real here, it's not like Gojo can be killed. And unlike the past, everything started lining up perfectly, causing this to be the perfect time for Kenjaku to continue his plans. As Tengen explains, the Star Plasma Vessel, the Six Eyes, and Tengen himself are all bounded by fate. However, 11 years ago, Yuji Zenin, aka Megumi's dad's intervention, destroyed that fate connecting them. When Toji killed the Star Plasma Vessel, Kenjaku's eyes must have lit up. But to add to Kenjaku's luck, Geto having the perfect technique that he needed also existed, along with him finally finding the Prism Realm 6 years ago to counter Gojo. It was like destiny itself wanted Kenjaku to succeed. With that, we come to the fourth and final prerequisite for Kenjaku, which was to obtain Mahito's evolved curse technique, Remote Idol Transfiguration. Now, this ability pretty much was the trigger for the Culling Games itself. Remote Idol Transfiguration allows the user to remotely manipulate the soul of a person. Kenjaku, using Geto's innate technique, was able to obtain this ability from Mahito, and as explained in chapter 136, this dude marked 1,000 humans across Japan with potential of sorcery and manipulated their souls, adapting their minds and bodies to allow them to become Jujutsu sorcerers. A good example of this was when Mahito made Juninpei a sorcerer. Kenjaku stated that it would be like 1,000 malevolent Itadori Yujis, where some of the marked ones were even given cursed objects to fuel their power. Once he had all his players ready, Kenjaku then announced the Culling Games, effectively forcing them all to participate. Which brings us back to the assimilation of humanity with Tengen and how the Culling Games will assist in the process. First, all of you guys need to understand that using Tengen as a medium to evolve humanity was the best course of action for Kenjaku. The only other option would have been using Tengen's barrier to idol transfigure everyone in Japan into sorcerers, because the Tengen's barrier makes sure that all cursed energy in Japan is optimized. However, when Megumi asked Tengen why didn't Kenjaku take this path, it was explained that Kenjaku lacked the required amount of cursed energy. Along with that, Geto's curse technique Uzumaki does not cycle back to the sorcerer after use, so it's too inefficient to use a curse technique to evolve humanity all at once. So the best way to achieve his goals for humans to evolve is actually to use Tengen and achieve human evolution by assimilating everyone with him. Now, usually only Star Plasma Vessels can assimilate with Tengen, hence why Gojo and Geto back in the days had to protect that designated vessel Riko. However, Tengen explains that because he had failed to assimilate that time with Riko, as there was no compatible vessel after her, Tengen started to evolve in the past 11 years. This new evolved version of him can merge with anyone now, and he can now merge with multitude of people because his soul now exists everywhere, making him one with the heaven and earth. With that, any human who assimilates with Tengen will surpass the normal meaning of a sorcerer. They will exist but also cease to exist, an entirely new form of existing. Due to Tengen's barrier technique, he can maintain his form and consciousness even after evolution. However, if multiple humans assimilate with Tengen and begin to evolve, it would become a disaster if even one of them became bad. Kenjaku might achieve his goal of a newly evolved humanity, but as Tengen explains, if this merger ends up stop happening, then ill will and negativity would spread instantly, as there would be no boundaries between the individuals, as they all will be connected on a whole new evolved level. 100 million people's depravity would flood the world, and what happened in Shibuya will happen everywhere. Think of it like this: Tengen is the medium for a hive mind for all of Japan. So if that hive mind was to become corrupted, then that will spread through Japan to eventually flood out into the entire world, eventually causing curses and curse energy to take on an even more prominent role in the world. So how does the Culling Game fit in all of this? Well, as Tengen puts it, it's like breaking into the body before merging. The game is actually a ritual. Having all of these new sorcerers battle it out, expending the cursed energy, will fuel the mass transport of humans in Japan to the other side. Kenjaku will also use the boundaries connected between each barrier of the Culling Game to allow this transfer to happen. Once the humans are gathered, then Kenjaku could force a merger between them and Tengen. The Culling Game is simply to announce and help the process of Tengen's assimilation. Tengen notes that Kenjaku must have placed many binding vows to pull this off, and one of them must have been that he cannot be the master of the Culling Game, meaning that the Culling Game is independent of Kenjaku, where he literally has no power over it compared to the other players. Seeing how Kenjaku awakened people with cursed techniques, once a person awoken with their newfound power, they have to declare that they are participating in the Culling Games within 19 days from the 31st of October. It's similar to how most events happen in real life. You just gotta register at your local magical barrier, which for reference sake is located between each of the 10 different colonies throughout Japan. Now each of these participants has to declare and get to the barriers in time before the 19 days are up, or they'll be subject to curse technique removal, which in simpler terms mean they will die. As curse technique removal means that every little bit of curse energy is taken away from the body, and that will result in death. Well, that is unless you're Maki, of course, but I'll get to her more in a bit. Now coming to these barriers, anyone that enters it and haven't been declared as a participant will automatically be declared as one. This is why Itadori, Megumi, even Yuta and Maki can join. Oh, and a side note is that any civilians who are situated in one of these 10 colonies where the barriers are at, they'll be given at least one chance to exit the game, so they better hope they don't miss that opportunity. Although this may sound a bit too nice for a series like Jujutsu Kaisen, since recently in Shibuya, civilian slaughter was at an all-time high in the series. However, this is to guarantee the idea for every participant that they are in the game of their own volition to sell the premise of the game, which in turn helps the effectiveness of the barriers. As there is no rule about entering or exiting the colonies, the players receive a clear objectives of exiting the barriers. But again, if you are a Jujutsu sorcerer, you're still under the rule of curse technique removal. Now just to quickly go over the barriers one more time, they are situated around the 10 colonies in Japan and are connected to each other to form a line that will send the humans in Japan to the other side. Remember guys, as I said earlier, the Culling Games is for these barriers to get charged up with cursed energies, you know, with all the fighting and killing and whatnot. Kenjaku literally cursed everyone in Japan in preparation for this merger, so once the Culling Game ritual is complete, then everyone in Japan will be transported, and then the merger can happen. Tengen stated this all depends on how long the game will last, which he estimated to be around 2 months. But coming back to the Culling Games and how it works, well, it's a point-based game where ending the life of another player grants you points. However, the amount of points is determined by individual worth that the game master decides, but as a general rule of thumb, non-sorcerers are worth 1 point, whereas sorcerers are worth at least 5 points. Although a bit vague, it makes it more fair considering how wide the worth can be for each individual sorcerer, ranging from people like Gojo to the students at Jujutsu High. Each player will be granted a Shikigami called a Kogane. I probably butchered the pronunciation of that, but you know, you get my point. But this Kogane will work as the interface of the game master, possibly even being the point of contact for the players, giving updates on objectives, rankings and points. Once you gathered 100 points, obviously not counting the points your own head is worth, you can spend it to negotiate with the game master, most likely through the Kogane, all to add a new rule. This means that you can't change or remove any rules, but at best you can create a new rule to counteract one of the previous rules. Similarly to how some of the rules are already extension of the previously mentioned rules, which fittingly brings us to our next rule. The game master must accept the proposed rule wanting to be added unless it has a long-lasting effect on the Culling Game. Although it may seem like it gives a lot of freedom to the game master, but you have to remember that as long as a rule is reasonable, then the game master will have no other choice but to to accept it. This could go on in the favor of our main cast as much as it can go against our main cast, since they're not the only ones who can add rules. So if a rule is added to counteract one rule, it's entirely possible another player can counteract that added rule. These guys can be dishing out those Uno reverses left, right, center. And lastly, if a person's score has remained unchanged for 19 days, you will be subject to curse technique removal, aka sentenced to death. This makes sense as it alludes the player isn't really participating, rather is hiding. With that, I hope you guys understand all the rules. So now let's go into who's participating. Well, so far there are only 3 other people who aren't part of our main gang that are participating in the Culling Games. Those 3 being Hana Kurusu, Fumihiko Takaba, and Megumi's sister Sumiki Fushiguro. Hana Kurusu claims to be an angel alongside her unique curse technique to be able to extinguish any curse technique. And the fact that she's been alive for around 1,000 years seems to be pointing to her being either a mysterious being, possibly confirming her claims to be an angel, or maybe all of her abilities from her longevity to removal or curse technique is just a byproduct of her own. The second participant is Fumihiko Takaba, however it's still a mystery, and the only thing we know is that he's having quite a difficult time with his fruitless career as a comedian.
Brother, this guy stinks!
This could be Gege's way of telling us that jokes are not meant for this guy. From our own students of Jujutsu High, the ones who will join in are Yuji, Megumi, Maki, Yuta, as well as a newly introduced third year who is apparently suspended from Jujutsu High, Kenjaku Hakari. Being described as a moody person, Yuta claims that Hakari could be potentially stronger than even himself once he hits the right mood. This is the same Yuta who has more cursed energy than Gojo, who is a seemingly invincible sorcerer that has little to no weakness at all. A student being stronger than him seems absurd, so we know for sure he'll be a great asset to the team. But hearing about his moody nature, getting him to join might prove to be a bigger challenge than expected. Who knows, he might expect a good fight with Megumi and Itadori. However, one of the biggest as well as the most interesting participant is actually Maki. Her body, free of cursed energy, is at no risk at all of the penalties, meaning she will have a lot of leeway in how to handle many of the situations that will be upcoming in the Culling Games. And despite her lack of cursed energy due to the healing restriction, she is not really at a disadvantage anymore, since she is now at a state similar to that of Doji, meaning she'll be a huge help if not being the ace of the team. We then have Megumi and Itadori, where both of them went through a huge power up. As mentioned by Choso in chapter 138, because of Sukuna and all of the fingers he ate, Yuji's overall strength has been growing. And then we have Megumi, where it's alluded that he has perfected his domain expansion. Whilst barely conscious, using his partial domain expansion, he was able to take down a special grade. Just imagine what a complete Shadow Garden might look like. And then we have Yuta, who again is self-explanatory. My man's a beast, what's more to say? At the moment, he decided to go ahead and declare his participation in the Culling Games far earlier than the others due to him wanting to scout out the barriers, as he's a good fit for solo operations. Overall, there are several goals to be met in the Culling Games, whether it's from our main gang or Kenjaku. The game is constructed to be fair, meaning that Kenjaku is on the same playing field as our students from Jujutsu High. However, the main goals of our cast will be to create a rule that will allow the escape of the unwilling participants. These participants includes people like Megumi's sister, Sumiki. However, the rule they add has to be deemed as non-detrimental to the Culling Games. That means creating a roundabout rule that won't directly counter certain rules, but instead work around them. Another goal that has to be kept in mind is to protect Tengen from Kenjaku, which Yuki and Choso are handling because they have to let Yuta out on the field as he's a valuable asset to the team. However, since Tengen is a potential subject of cursed spirit manipulation, if Kenjaku gets his hand on him, it will spell some serious consequence, so it's important that Tengen is safe from him. Now lastly, the most important goal is to save our sensei Gojo. To do this, our gang who are participating in the game has to get in contact with Hana Kurusu, as her power are essential for the rescue of Satoru Gojo. However, whether she'll be an ally or an enemy is remained to be unseen, considering her time as a sorcerer traces back to 1,000 years ago. She was part of Sukuna's and Kenjaku's era, meaning it's likely she'll be an enemy, or she might just hate all Jujutsu sorcerers altogether, thinking that she's above them and her duty is to eradicate all Jujutsu sorcery. With that, we come to the end of this video. I hope a lot of things were cleared up for you guys. Watch out for the next part where we will be delving deeper into the mission to save Gojo, explaining how the prison realm works and the backdoor and why Hana is so important. So make sure you ding that notification bell to stay updated, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Till then, we'll catch you lot next time.